AITA for laughing in my ex-wife's face when I became a millionaire overnight? She looked me straight in the eye and told me I was going to die broke and forgotten. She just didn't know that fate had already signed a different contract for me. I signed the papers on a Tuesday afternoon in March. The lawyer's office smelled of stale coffee and cheap cologne. My ex-wife sat across from me, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my entire month's salary. Her lawyer, a silver-haired guy named Mr. Winslow, sporting a watch that could feed a family for weeks, slid documents across the table with a smug look. She got the house, the one we had been renting for 6 years. The landlord agreed to transfer the lease to her name. She got the newer car, the Honda we had bought together 3 years earlier. I got the beat-up Toyota with 180,000 miles on the odometer that barely started on cold mornings. She took half of the little we had in our joint savings account. I kept my personal account, which held about $800. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was her smile. That victorious, cruel smile as Mr. Winslow handed me the last page. She leaned forward, and I'll never forget what she said. You know what's funny? I actually pity you, Jace. You're going to die broke and forgotten. No one will remember you ever existed. You were always too weak to make something of yourself. Too mediocre, too bland. I'm honestly doing you a favor by leaving now, before I waste any more good years of my life on you. I didn't answer. I just signed where I was told to sign. Her lawyer looked uncomfortable for a split second, then went back to his paperwork. I walked out of that office with a folder full of documents proving I had lost almost everything in under an hour. 3 months later, I was loading boxes onto pallets in a warehouse on the other side of town. Night shift, $10 an hour, the kind of job where nobody learns your name because the turnover is too high. I'd clock in at 11 p.m., spend 8 hours moving stock, then clock out at 7 a.m. My back ached all the time. My hands were rough and covered in cuts from cardboard edges and plastic straps. I was renting a room from an elderly woman named Eloise. $75 a week. Shared bathroom. No kitchen access, aside from a mini fridge in my room and a microwave I'd bought secondhand. The room barely held a single bed and a small table I'd found on the curb. But it was mine. It was clean, and no one could take it from me. The guys I worked with were decent. No one asked questions. We just nodded at each other, did the work, and went home. Sometimes a few of them would go for breakfast at the diner down the street after the shift ended. I went once or twice, but most of the time, I just wanted to sleep. I hadn't told anyone about the divorce. I didn't see the point. What was I going to say? That my wife of 7 years had decided I wasn't worth it anymore? That she'd met someone, a sales manager at the marketing firm where she worked, and realized she could do better? That she'd made sure to take everything she could on her way out? The truth was, I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just tired. Tired of thinking about it. Tired of remembering the way she used to look at me like I mattered before she started looking at me like a piece of furniture. Tired of wondering what I could have done differently. So I worked. I loaded boxes, I stacked pallets, I drove home in that dying Toyota, and I slept in my rented room. I ate cheap. I kept quiet. I walked with my head down. That was my life, Monday through Friday, sometimes Saturday if they needed the extra hands. The warehouse was massive, one of those distribution centers for a national chain store. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead all night, and the concrete floor made your feet throb. The constant beeping of forklifts and the sharp scrape of pallets being dragged were the only soundtrack. My supervisor was a guy named Conrad. Late 40s, a beer gut, and a perpetual case of the sniffles. He didn't care about anything except making sure the trucks were loaded on time. As long as you did your job, he left you alone. I liked that. No pep talks, no team-building nonsense. I needed a paycheck, he needed a body. It was a simple transaction. It was a Thursday night, about 3 months after the divorce was finalized. I was in the back of the warehouse, organizing a shipment of kitchen appliances. My shift was almost over. I was just wondering if I had enough energy to stop at the grocery store for milk or if I should just skip breakfast again. That's when I heard someone call my name. Not my first name, my full name. The way you say it when you really know someone, when you remember them from a time before everything fell apart. I turned around, confused. The guy walking toward me looked completely out of place. He was wearing dark slacks and a button-down shirt. No tie, but still way too dressed up for a warehouse at 6 a.m. He was about my age, maybe a little older, with dark hair just starting to go gray at the temples. He looked familiar, but in that moment, I couldn't place him. He stopped a few feet away, put his hands in his pockets, and smiled. Not a mocking smile, not a pitying one, just a genuine, slightly tired smile. "Took me 3 weeks to find you," he said. "You're not easy to track down when you don't want to be found." I dropped the box I was holding. My brain was trying to catch up. Who was this guy? How did he know me? Then it clicked. The voice, the way he stood, the scar above his left eyebrow from that time we tried to move a server rack, and he hit his head on the doorframe. "Harlan," I managed. He nodded. "Yeah, it's been a while." Harlan Greaves, my partner from another life. Back when I was 25 and stupid enough to think I could build something that mattered. We'd spent 16-hour days coding in a tiny apartment, living on ramen noodles and ambition. Long before I gave it all up for a steady job, a normal life, and a wife who eventually decided normal wasn't enough. "What are you doing here?" I asked. My voice sounded strange. I hadn't had a conversation longer than 2 sentences in weeks. Harlan looked around the warehouse, then his eyes came back to me. "We need to talk. You have time for coffee after your shift?" I hesitated. I had no idea what he could possibly want after 15 years of silence. But something in his expression told me this wasn't a social call. This was something else. Something that had made him hunt me down to a warehouse in the middle of nowhere at 6 in the morning. "Yeah," I said finally. "I'm off in an hour." He nodded. "There's a diner 2 blocks east. I'll wait for you there." And then he turned and walked toward the exit, leaving me standing there with a half-loaded pallet and more questions than I'd had in months. Conrad appeared around the corner, a tablet in his hand, sniffling. "You on break or something?" "No," I said, grabbing another box. "Just finishing up." But my hands were shaking, and for the first time in 3 months, I felt something other than exhaustion. I felt awake. The diner was the kind of place that looks the same at 6 a.m. as it does at 6 p.m. Worn vinyl booths, a checkered tile floor, a counter with a rotating pastry display. The kind of place where the coffee is terrible, but no one complains because at least it's hot. Harlan was sitting in a booth in the back when I walked in. He'd already ordered 2 coffees. I slid into the booth across from him, still in my warehouse clothes, smelling like cardboard and sweat. He didn't seem to care. "You look different," he said. "Yeah, well, 15 years will do that." He smiled slightly. "You know what I mean. You look like you've been through it." I picked up the coffee. It was bitter and scalding, exactly what I expected. "Why are you here, Harlan? And how did you find me?" "I hired someone. A private investigator. Cost me about $2,000, but it was worth it." He pulled a folder out of a messenger bag beside him and placed it on the table between us. "I need to show you something. And I need you to really listen before you decide I've lost my mind." I stared at the folder. "Okay. You remember the software? The project we were working on all those years ago?" I almost laughed. "The inventory management system? Harlan, that was a lifetime ago. We didn't even really launch it. The company went under after 6 months. I know you left. Went to work that tech support job. Remember? You said you needed something stable, something that paid the bills." I remembered. I was 26, burned out, broke, and convinced I'd wasted a year chasing a dream that was never going to work. Harlan had been upset when I left, but we parted on okay terms. After that, we just drifted apart. Life happened. "I never blamed you for leaving," Harlan continued. "But I couldn't let it go. I kept working on it. Tinkered with it. Found some investors who believed in what we started. Small money, nothing huge, but enough to keep it going." "That's great, man. Really. But what does that have to do with me?" Harlan opened the folder. Inside were legal documents, pages of dense text with highlighted sections. He turned the folder so I could see. "When we set up the company, we filed the articles of incorporation. You had 40%. I had 40%. And there was a third partner, remember Sterling? The guy who put up the seed money? He had 20. I vaguely remembered Sterling, an older guy with a little money to risk on 2 kids with big ideas. I hadn't thought about him in years. "Okay," I said slowly. "But I left. I walked away from all of it. I thought it was dead. You never signed anything giving up your shares. You just stopped showing up. And I never asked you to, because I thought maybe one day you'd come back, or I'd need to find you. So I set up a trust. I put your 40% in it. Protected it. Kept it separate from everything I was doing." I put my mug down on the table. Why would you do that? Because we built it together. The foundation, the core code, the whole architecture. That was me and you, pulling all-nighters in that apartment with the broken air conditioner. You earned that 40%. Just because you walked away doesn't mean you forfeited it. My head was spinning. None of this made any sense. People didn't do things like this, especially not in business. Harlan, I really appreciate that, but I don't understand what you're telling me. Did you sell the company or something? Are you trying to give me some kind of payout? He settled back in the booth, and for the first time, I saw how tired he looked, how much this must have been weighing on him. Last month, a company called Landry Systems made an offer to buy us out. They're huge. Enterprise software, government contracts, the whole 9 yards. They wanted our inventory platform because it integrates with systems nobody else can even touch. It took 2 years of negotiations, but 3 weeks ago, the deal closed. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. How much? $11.7 million. Suddenly the diner seemed very loud. Someone dropped a plate in the kitchen. A truck rumbled past outside. The fluorescent light above our booth buzzed. You get 40% of that, Harlan said quietly. After taxes and legal fees, it comes out to about $4.7 million. I couldn't speak. I was literally unable to form words. I just sat there, staring at him, waiting for him to burst out laughing and tell me this was all some elaborate joke. He didn't laugh. He just pushed the folder a little closer to me. It's all in here. The trust documents, the acquisition agreement. Your bank info is out of date, obviously, so we'll need to update that. There's a lawyer waiting to talk to you. Her name's Claudine Mercer. She's good. She'll explain everything clearly. That's impossible, I finally managed to say. I load boxes in a warehouse for $10 an hour. I live in a rented room. I just went through a divorce that took everything I had. And you're telling me I'm a millionaire. Yes. Why didn't you look for me sooner? Why wait until now? Harlan looked down at his coffee cup. I tried. About 5 years ago, I hired someone to find you. They tracked you down living 2 states away. Married, steady job. You looked happy, or at least stable. I didn't want to mess that up. I figured it was better to wait until I had something concrete to tell you. The trust was secure. Your shares were protected. I could afford to let you live your life. He looked up at me. And now the deal is done. The money is real. And when I tried to contact you at your old address, I found out you'd moved. No forwarding address, phone disconnected. So, I dug deeper, and I found out about the divorce. Found out you were here. And I decided I'd waited long enough. I picked up one of the documents. My name was on it. Legal language I barely understood, numbers that seemed to have no connection to my actual life. What about my ex-wife? I asked. The question came out before I could stop it. Can she claim any of this? Harlan shook his head. I already checked with Claudine. The trust was set up before your marriage. And according to the divorce papers she looked at, your ex signed away any rights to prior business interests. Her lawyer must have thought it was just boilerplate. He probably never imagined there was anything of value attached to it. I almost laughed. I actually almost laughed. She had been so focused on taking the house, the car, the savings, that her expensive lawyer had let the one thing that actually mattered slip right past him. So she gets nothing. Exactly. It's yours. Free and clear. I sat there for a long time, holding that document, trying to process what I was hearing. 3 months ago, I was sitting in a lawyer's office while my ex-wife told me I was going to die broke and forgotten. And now this. I don't know what to say, I admitted. Harlan smiled. You don't have to say anything. Just don't go back to that warehouse tonight. Come with me. Let's go see Claudine. Let's start figuring out what you want to do with your life now that you have real options. I looked down at my hands. They were rough, covered in cuts. The hands of someone who had been doing manual labor for months. In a few hours, I was supposed to go back to my rented room, get some sleep, and wake up to do it all over again. But Harlan was here, sitting across from me with a folder full of documents that said I never had to do that again. Okay, I said. Let's go meet your lawyer. Claudine Mercer's office was in a mid-sized commercial building downtown. It wasn't ostentatious, but it was professional. The kind of place that said the person was successful without trying to intimidate you with it. She was in her 50s, with sharp eyes behind modern glasses and a handshake that was firm without being aggressive. I've been looking forward to meeting you, Jace, she said as we sat down in her conference room. Harlan had driven us straight from the diner. I was still in my warehouse clothes, feeling completely out of place among the mahogany furniture and framed degrees. She laid it all out on the table. The original company incorporation documents from back in the day, the trust fund Harlan had set up, the acquisition agreement from 3 weeks ago, bank statements showing where the money was now, sitting in an escrow account, waiting for me to claim it. Is this really legitimate? I asked, for what I think was the 5th time. All of it. Yes, she said, without a trace of hesitation. I've verified every document personally. The IRS has been notified. Taxes are being handled. As soon as you provide your updated banking information and sign the transfer authorization, the funds will be in your account within 3 business days. I looked at Harlan. He was sitting quietly, letting Claudine do her job. He already knew all this. He'd been living with this information for weeks, maybe months, while I was stacking pallets and eating off the dollar menu. Why did you really do this? I asked him. You could have claimed my shares were abandoned. You could have restructured the company. You could have done a dozen things that would have given you my portion. Harlan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, my dad worked at the same factory for 30 years. When they downsized, they gave him 2 weeks' notice and a handshake. No pension, no severance, nothing. Just you're done. He died 5 years later, bitter and broke. I saw what that did to him, what it did to our family. He leaned forward. When we started this thing, we were partners. Real partners. You put in as many hours as I did. You wrote half that code. Just because you left because you needed stability doesn't erase what you built. I wasn't going to be the kind of guy who pretends loyalty only matters when it's convenient. Something tightened in my chest. I had spent 3 months believing that nobody cared if I lived or died. And Harlan was sitting here telling me he'd spent 15 years protecting something I didn't even know existed. Claudine slid a set of documents across the table. These are the transfer forms. Take your time. Read everything. Ask any questions you want. This money is yours, and you should feel comfortable with every step. I spent the next 2 hours reading every page. Claudine explained everything in plain language. Harlan answered my questions about the company, the acquisition, what had happened after I left. It was surreal, sitting in that office, learning about a whole chapter of my own life that I had missed. Finally, I signed everything that needed signing. What now? I asked. Now you wait 3 days, Claudine said. And then you decide what kind of life you want to build. Harlan gave me a ride back to my rented room. We didn't talk much on the way. What was there to say? My entire world had shifted in the space of a single morning. When he dropped me off at the door, he said, call me if you need anything. Advice, a referral, whatever. You don't have to figure this out alone. I nodded. Thanks, Harlan. For everything. For remembering me. You were never forgotten, he said simply. And then he drove away. I walked back into that tiny little room and sat on the edge of the bed. The mini fridge hummed in the corner. Through the thin walls, I could hear Eloise watching her morning game shows. Everything was exactly the same as when I'd left for my shift 12 hours earlier. Except nothing was the same at all. I didn't quit the warehouse right away. It probably sounds crazy, but I needed time to think, to plan. I'd spent 3 months learning what it was like to have nothing. I wasn't going to rush into having everything without being smart about it. I called in sick for 3 days, just enough time for the money to clear. When it finally hit my account, I sat in my room staring at my phone screen, looking at those numbers that didn't seem to belong to any recognizable reality. For $1,700,000 and change. I opened a new checking account at a different bank. I transferred $50,000 into it for immediate expenses and left the rest in a high-yield savings account until I could talk to a financial advisor. I wasn't going to be stupid with this. I'd seen too many stories of lottery winners who were broke again in 5 years. On the 4th day, I went back to the warehouse. Conrad was surprised to see me. Thought you quit, he said. Just needed a few days. I'm back. I worked for 2 more weeks. Full shifts, loading boxes, stacking pallets, keeping my head down. A few of the guys asked if I was feeling better. I said I was. Nobody pushed it. During those 2 weeks, I made my plans. I met with the financial advisor Claudine recommended. I set up investments. I talked to a tax lawyer. I made sure every penny was accounted for and protected. I bought a house. Nothing fancy. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a decent neighborhood, good schools nearby, even though I didn't have kids. The kind of place that felt solid, permanent. My own. I paid cash. The real estate agent was baffled but didn't complain. I bought a truck. A 7-year-old used Ford pickup, well-maintained, 30,000 miles on it. The reliable kind that would last another 10 years without any trouble. Paid cash for that, too. I set up automatic payments for utilities, water, insurance, everything. I made sure I always had 6 months of expenses in my checking account. I put a portion away for retirement. I invested the rest conservatively. I wasn't trying to get richer. I was trying to get stable. And I started to think about what I actually wanted to do with my life, now that survival wasn't the only goal. On my last day at the warehouse, Conrad pulled me aside during the break. Putting in your notice? Yeah. 2 weeks are up tomorrow. Thanks for the work, but I found something else. He nodded, asked no questions, just said, you were reliable. That counts for something. I finished my shift, clocked out for the last time, and walked to my new-to-me pickup in the parking lot as the sun came up. I sat there for a minute, looking at the warehouse, thinking about those 3 months. I didn't regret them. They had taught me something important. They'd shown me that I could survive, that I could lose everything and still get up the next day. That was a good thing to know. But I was done surviving. It was time to actually live. I drove to my new house. It was empty except for a mattress I'd bought. I'd been moving my few belongings from Eloise's place bit by bit over the week. She'd been happy for me when I told her I found a better job and was moving out. I left her an extra $200 when I left. She tried to refuse. I insisted. I stood in the living room of my own house in the soft morning light, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace. Real, genuine peace. My phone buzzed. A text from Harlan. So how's the new place? I smiled and texted back. Quiet. In a good way. 3 dots appeared on the screen. Then good. You deserve it. Don't let anyone tell you different. I looked around the empty room. I thought about my ex-wife, wherever she was, probably still thinking she'd won, still believing I was going to die broke and forgotten. She had no idea. And for now, I was perfectly happy to keep it that way. I spent the first month in the new house just existing. No drama, no big plans. I woke up when I wanted. I made coffee in my own kitchen. I sat on the back deck and watched the neighbors walk their dogs. It was a wonderful, blissful kind of boredom. But I wasn't built to be idle forever. By the 6th week, I was getting restless. The money was secure, the house was furnished, the truck ran smoothly. I had everything I needed, but I didn't have anything I really cared about. That's when I remembered something Harlan had said during one of those late-night coding sessions back in 2009. We were talking about what we'd do if we ever actually made it. He'd said he wanted to buy his parents a house. I'd said I wanted to help kids who couldn't afford college. I was 25 and broke when I said that. They were just words. A nice idea that sounded good out loud. Now I was 39, and I had the means to actually do it. I called Claudine and asked her how to set up a scholarship fund. She put me in touch with someone who specialized in philanthropic foundations. Within 3 weeks, it was structured properly. A fund specifically for low-income students who wanted to study computer science or software engineering. It wasn't a massive fund, but it could cover full tuition and expenses for 5 students a year. I called it the Greaves-Nichols Education Fund. His last name and mine. When I told him, he called me a sentimental idiot for putting his name on it. Then he donated $50,000 to the fund. Said if I was going to be sentimental, he might as well lean into it. The first applications came in 2 months later. Reading them was humbling. These kids were me, 15 years ago. Smart, ambitious, and completely locked out of opportunity because their families couldn't afford it. I chose 5 scholars. I sent the acceptance letters myself. One of them, a kid named Alden from the south side of town, called me crying when he got the letter. Said he'd been working 2 jobs to save up for community college. Said he never thought someone like him would get to go to a 4-year university. I told him he deserved it, that someone gave me a chance once, and now I was paying it forward. It felt better than any expensive car or luxury vacation ever could. I also started consulting. Harlan's company, now owned by Landry Systems, needed help integrating the software into their larger systems. They offered me a contract. I took it because I missed coding. I missed solving problems. I missed feeling useful. I didn't want to build another company. I just wanted to work on things that mattered without the weight of survival hanging over every decision. Life found a rhythm. I worked in the mornings, usually from my home office or a coffee shop downtown. In the afternoons, I'd take care of things around the house or meet with the funds coordinator. In the evenings, I'd cook dinner, read, watch whatever I wanted. On weekends, I'd take trips to the hardware store, buying things for small projects around the house. It was quiet, simple, and exactly what I needed. Then, about 4 months after the money came through, I ran into Brinley. I was at the hardware store, looking at drill bits, when I heard someone call my name. I turned, and there she was, my ex-wife's younger sister. She looked surprised to see me, but not unhappy. "Jace," she said, "I barely recognized you. You look good." "Thanks. You too. How are things?" "Good, busy. You know how it is." She glanced at my cart. "Doing some renovations?" "Just some projects. Keeping busy." There was a slightly awkward silence. Brinley had always been decent to me during the marriage. She never took sides in the divorce, which I respected, but I knew she talked to her sister all the time. Anything I told her would eventually get back. "I heard you moved," she said carefully. "Are you doing okay, Jace?" "After everything, I'm doing okay. Better than okay, actually. Things worked out." She looked like she wanted to ask more, but something in my expression must have told her not to push it. "Good. I'm glad. You deserve good things." "Thanks." Another silence. Then she said, "If you ever want to grab coffee or something, catch up, just let me know. I know things got weird, but you were family for a long time. That doesn't just disappear." "I'll keep that in mind," I said, even though we both knew I wouldn't. She nodded, gave me a small smile, and left. I watched her go, then turned back to the drill bits. That encounter told me everything I needed to know. The information hadn't leaked. My ex-wife didn't know about the money, didn't know where I lived, didn't know anything. And I wanted to keep it that way for as long as possible. I bought the drill bits, put them in my truck, and drove home. On the way, I stopped at a grocery store I didn't usually go to. I was grabbing something for dinner when I saw a familiar face, one of my ex's friends from her book club days. The woman looked at me, did a double take of recognition, and then quickly looked away, hurrying down the next aisle without a word. Interesting. She recognized me, but didn't want to talk, which meant she was probably embarrassed about the divorce. Perfect. I didn't want to talk either. I finished my shopping and left. I went home, put everything away, made dinner, ate while reading a book on infrastructure management, went to bed at a reasonable hour. Normal, boring, perfect. A week later, I got an email from one of the scholars. Alden, the kid who had called me crying. He sent a picture of his dorm room, grinning like he'd won the lottery. Said the classes were hard but incredible. Said he couldn't believe this was his life now. I looked at that picture for a long time, thinking about how close I'd come to never having the resources to do this. Thinking about how if Harlan had been a different kind of person, if he'd decided loyalty didn't matter, I'd still be loading boxes and eating instant noodles. But he wasn't, and I wasn't. I wrote back a short message. I told Alden to keep working hard, that I was proud of him, and that he could reach out if he ever needed anything. Then I closed the laptop and went out onto the back deck. It was early evening, that time when the light is soft and everything seems suspended between day and night. I sat in one of the chairs I'd bought, drank some water, and just existed. No stress, no anger, no bitterness for what I'd lost or who had taken it. Just peace. My phone buzzed. A text from Harlan. "Landry wants to put you on another project. Bigger one. Interested?" I thought for about 10 seconds and texted back. "Sure. Send me the details." Because I wasn't hiding. I wasn't running away. I was just living my life on my own terms. Building things that mattered, helping people where I could. And if my ex-wife ever found out, if she ever realized what she'd walked away from, if she ever came back with apologies and regrets, well, that would be a conversation I'd handle when it happened. But it wouldn't change anything. The past was over. I had moved on. And honestly, I'd never been happier. The article came out on a Wednesday morning in October. A local tech blog was doing a piece on successful software acquisitions in the region. Harlan's company was featured, and buried in the third paragraph were the names of the original founders. Harlan called me around noon. "So, an article came out. It mentions our names. Just wanted to give you a heads up in case anyone reaches out." "Thanks for the warning," I said. I pulled up the article on my laptop. There it was. My full name, listed as a co-founder alongside Harlan and Sterling. The piece talked about the buyout, the innovation of the platform, how it was now being used by major corporations. It didn't mention a dollar amount, but anyone with a little bit of research could estimate the range. I closed the laptop and went back to work. I didn't think much of it. The first text came 2 days later. Unknown number. Hey, this is weird, but someone sent me an article and I think it was you they mentioned. Is this the same software you used to work on? That's amazing. Happy for you. I didn't recognize the number. I deleted it. Then another one came. Saw something about a tech buyout. Was that you? Congrats, man. Then a third, from someone claiming to be an old co-worker from the tech support job I'd had years ago. Dude, did you get rich off that startup? Awesome. Man, good for you. I blocked them all. On Saturday, my ex-wife started calling. Not from her number, from numbers I didn't recognize, but I knew the voice on the voicemail. That soft, fake tone she used when she wanted something. Hey Jace, it's me. I know this is out of the blue, but I've been thinking about you. I'd really love to talk. Call me back. I deleted the message. She called again an hour later. And again that evening. Different numbers each time. I blocked every one. On Sunday morning, she showed up at my house. I was having my coffee on the front porch when her car pulled into my driveway. The new Honda, the one she got in the divorce. She got out, dressed in jeans and a sweater, hair pulled back, trying to look casual, approachable. I just sat there. I didn't get up. I didn't acknowledge her until she was halfway up the walkway. Nice house, she said, looking around. I didn't know you moved. Didn't think you needed to know. She stopped a few feet from the porch steps. Can we talk? Just for a minute. No. She blinked, like she wasn't prepared for something that direct. Please, Jace. I know things ended badly. I know I said things I shouldn't have, but I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I just wanted to clear the air. I took a sip of coffee. There's nothing to clear. We got divorced. It's done. Move on. I saw the article, she said quietly. About the software company. The buyout. There it was. The real reason she was in my driveway at 9 in the morning on a Sunday. Good for you, I said. You never told me you had a stake in something like that. You never asked. And even if you had, it wouldn't have changed the divorce. The trust was set up before we were married. Your lawyer made sure you signed that clause giving up any rights to prior business interests. Remember? Her face went pale. She remembered. She remembered it now. That was just standard paperwork. He said it didn't matter. It did. She took a step toward me. Look, I know I hurt you. I know I was harsh. But we were together for 7 years. That has to count for something. It did. In the past. She swallowed hard. That day, when I said you were going to die broke and forgotten. It's funny how things turned out, isn't it? She tried a weak smile. I was angry. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. Her voice was weaker now. What do you want me to say? That I was wrong. Okay. I was wrong. You're clearly doing well for yourself. I'm happy for you. Can't we just be civil? I stood up, put my coffee mug on the porch railing, and really looked at her for the first time since she arrived. You need to leave. Don't come back here. Don't call. Don't send messages through your sister or your friends or anyone else. We have nothing to talk about. Ever again. Her expression changed, like the idea was inconceivable. You can't be serious. You can't be this cold. I can and I am. Goodbye. I walked back into the house, closed the door, locked it, and watched through the window as she stood there for another minute, clearly trying to decide if she should knock. She didn't. Finally, she walked back to her car and drove away. My phone buzzed. A text from Brinley. She's asking about you. Said she wanted to apologize. I told her to leave you alone. Just wanted to give you a heads up. I texted back. Thanks. Another message came in, this time from a lawyer I didn't know. A formal letterhead representing my ex. Regarding potential discrepancies in the divorce settlement. Please contact our office to discuss. I forwarded it to Claudine. 5 minutes later, she called me, laughing. They have no case. None. I'm sending a reply that will shut this down once and for all. Go for it, I said. And that was that. The desperation had started. The reality was sinking in. She had walked away from something valuable because she was too busy being cruel to see what actually mattered. I didn't feel any victory. I just felt relief that it was over. 6 months after Claudine shut down the lawyer's attempt, my life had settled into a place I never imagined I'd reach. Contentment. The scholarship fund was thriving. 10 students now, not just 5. Harlan had convinced 2 other tech entrepreneurs to contribute. We were making a real difference. I had taken a senior consultant role at Landry Systems. The work was challenging and meaningful. I was helping design systems that solved real problems, and I was doing it from my home office, on my own schedule, for compensation that felt fair. My house had become a home. I'd finished the projects, planted a garden, built a deck out back. Little things that made the space mine. I didn't think about my ex-wife anymore, not with anger or bitterness. She had just become a person I used to know, someone who had made choices and had to live with them. One Tuesday morning, I was at a coffee shop that had become my regular spot. I was reviewing some code on my laptop when the door opened, and she walked in. She saw me immediately and froze for half a second. I could see the calculation in her head: leave, approach, pretend she hadn't seen me. I decided for her. I looked up and gave a simple nod. A polite acknowledgement, the same gesture you'd give a distant acquaintance. Then I turned back to my laptop. She stood there a moment longer, then turned and walked out without ordering anything. Through the window, I saw her sit in her car for a minute before driving away. She looked tired, older, like the weight of her choices had finally caught up with her. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no revenge, just a quiet, peaceful awareness that the chapter was 100% closed. My phone buzzed. A text from Harlan. New project opportunity. You up for building something from the ground up again? No pressure, just thought I'd ask. I smiled and texted back, tell me more. Because that's what my life was now. Moving forward. New opportunities. Helping students reach dreams they thought were impossible. Working on projects that mattered. Living in a house that was mine. Driving a truck I loved. Spending my time on things that brought me peace. I hadn't died broke and forgotten. I was alive, financially secure, and building something meaningful. The people who mattered knew my name. The students I helped would remember what was done for them. Harlan had never forgotten me, even when I'd forgotten myself. That evening, I sat on my back deck, watching the sunset. My phone rang. It was Alden, the first scholar, calling to say he'd been accepted for an internship at a major tech company. He was talking fast, excited, grateful. He said one day he was going to pay it forward, help other kids the way he'd been helped. I told him I believed in him, because I truly did. After I hung up, I sat outside for a while longer. The air was cool, the sky was clear. Somewhere in the city, my ex-wife was probably still processing what she'd lost, trying to figure out how to live with her own mistakes. But that wasn't my problem anymore. She made her choice the day she said I'd die broke and forgotten. She was wrong on both counts. And that was enough. I finished my glass of water, stood up, and went inside. Tomorrow, I'd talk to Harlan about that new project. This weekend, I'd meet with the fund coordinator to discuss expanding the scholarship program. Next month, I'd visit one of the universities where our students were studying. I had plans, purpose, and peace. And honestly, you couldn't ask for more than that. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.